Update. I broke my wife and I don't think it is fixable. Original post. This happened 6 months ago and I'm only choosing to talk about it now because I don't see any improvement in sight. And I feel hopeless. We were at a party. My friend is single and we started talking about love and relationships. My wife and I have been happily married for 7 years. We have 3 beautiful children. She is the love of my life. When I was talking to my friend, I felt like we were on different levels of thinking. His complaints were mostly superficial about how the people he dated looked. I was a bit drunk at that point and said something like, "You don't fall in love with looks. Look at me and my wife. I love her more than anything compared to my ex, who was just looks." Everyone went silent, and my damage control was even worse. So I ended up just shutting the heck up. I couldn't get my point across. But even I started to think that maybe these thoughts had been in my head and only came out when I was drunk. My wife was shocked. The first week, she was so angry and wanted to understand what I meant, but nothing I said was good enough. I told her I was drunk, that I love her, and that I think she is the most beautiful woman. But she thought being drunk made me say my true feelings. Then one morning, she just said, "You know, I have never felt as ugly as I have felt this past week. I have always thought I was beautiful." She didn't cry this time, but she hasn't been happy since. I started crying and apologizing, but she was emotionless. That was the last time she truly looked at me. She is now taciturn and distant, but only with me. She has lost 20 pounds and works out 6 to 7 days a week. She never has free time with me. If she's not with the children or her family and friends, she's immersed in a book or has her headphones on. She's always fully clothed now, even in bed. She locks the bathroom door when she showers. She is more active in social media too. She shares many pictures of herself and she thanks everyone who gives her a compliment. Before, it was just pictures with our children and pets, but now it's her, working out in sports bras and tights. I broke her and I don't know how to fix it. Now for the top advice before reading the update. So, are you going to answer any of the comments asking about what you said as damage control? Because that's a very important detail that you left out of your post, and it definitely matters. My friend, my wife, and my wife's friend and husband were very silent, and I started saying I didn't mean that my wife wasn't good looking, I just meant that I loved her for other things. Then, even worse, I said that sometimes you are very attracted to someone and everything is a whirlwind with them, but you have nothing in common and see no future. I probably alluded to the fact that I used my brain and not my junk when looking for a relationship. I thought it was the logical way of thinking, but for her, I think she would have preferred that whirlwind and passion. I haven't read all the comments yet. This is the first one I read that asked me to explain the damage control. If you love her, you'd find a way. Plus, when you love someone, they automatically become the hottest person to you. Even if you didn't think it when you met, once you fall in love, I mean real love, that's it. Tunnel vision. It doesn't mean they're perfect or that you're obsessed 24/7 or super attracted all the time, but they become the one. Now, all that said, if you love your wife and your child and would do anything for them, you need to fix it. And why the heck is a grown and married man talking about scales of hotness with another grown man? Are y'all really this shallow and stupid? Has she been there for you? Does she take care of you, love you, make you feel wanted? Go fix your mess. When I met her and fell in love with her, she was the most attractive girl I knew. To this day. That's what I was trying to say. She is very beautiful. But that wasn't the only reason I fell for her. It was beyond looks. Looks become superficial and unimportant when you love someone. She finally agreed to couples therapy after I showed her this post. I don't want to be too hopeful, but after her suggestion that I would sleep with other women, I think even she understood that it was very hurtful to me. Now for the update. We have been going to counseling, and at first, my wife was very reluctant to open up and wanted to pretend that everything was fine. During one session, she suddenly asked me, "I want the truth, here and now. No sugarcoating, and do not try to spare my feelings. Did you find me attractive when we met?" I really didn't know what to say to this. I love her more than anything, even more than my children and myself. I think she's the most beautiful woman I know. But did I immediately think that when I met her? No, I didn't really find her attractive. We all grow up having a type. I remember thinking that she wasn't exactly my type, but she was so lovable and sweet. It didn't take me long to fall for her, and now I find women who look like her attractive. So I guess type is something very superficial and fleeting. I told her the truth. She cried and said that she didn't even know why she was so hurt and crying. She knew there were more beautiful women. She never wanted to be the most beautiful woman either. But she had always been considered beautiful by other people, which is true, and had always gotten attention. What made her sad was the fact that the one person she wanted to be found the most beautiful by didn't think that. And that was painful because she loved me way before we even started dating. This happened during our latest session, and it was the most draining experience. Later, when we got home, she apologized for making a big deal out of something so trivial. But she also said she just couldn't help it, and she was confused as to why it affected her so badly. On Saturday, she told me that she didn't want to stay in our marriage, that something inside her had broken. She asked me if I would try to hurt her and the children if we separated, if I would use them to get back at her, if I would alienate her because she chose to leave. I promised her that none of this would happen, and that I loved her and wanted her to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. Our families are in an uproar over this, mostly angry with her, saying she let her insecurities get the best and worst of her. But I don't think it's insecurity, to be honest. She has never cared about other people's attention. She just realized that the only person whose approval she cared about never really gave it to her. At least not in the way she wanted. The fact that I had to learn to see her that way wasn't enough. And there is way more to this story for sure, especially the fact that they're in counseling already. This is most likely the straw that broke the camel's back. This is an update for the husband's original post. The counseling is relatively new due to an incident where OP humiliated his wife at a party by basically saying to his friend, "Stop being so shallow about women. Look at my wife. She's no beauty queen, but I love her," in so many words. The OP's wife became detached, started hardcore working out, and glowing up. Apparently, their marriage was perfect until he had the audacity to say that, and then just made excuses for half a year. Yeah, I'd be devastated too. Dude, your pencil is not sharp at all. You really could have changed the way you said that to her. I had a type back then, but one look at you and the type has broken. You were the most amazing woman I had ever met. You were different from every other woman in the best ways possible. You could have also said, you fall in like with looks. You fall in love with the person they are. Your wife is struggling, and you keep putting your foot in your mouth. He is so painfully honest in the worst and most stupid way ever. Too honest for his own good. Don't have to lie, but can word it at least a bit better to reassure her how you really feel. Next story. I'm relieved that my wife passed away. My wife's health had been slowly and not too steadily declining for the last 2 decades. We found out at the start of last year that she had probably had MS for most of those 20 years, previously undiagnosed. By the end, she was wheelchair-bound, barely able to stand at all, and required constant assistance. And she refused to cooperate with the physical therapists and nurses who were trying to help her. She did the absolute minimum she felt she could get away with it, and she rarely, if ever, thought about the impact of her decisions or what she said on other people. For the last 5 years, more and more of my time had been taken up being a live-in caregiver for her. This was on top of working a full-time job to support us. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I was tired of being treated as little more than a servant to meet her needs. In August of 2024, she finally got bad enough that I couldn't deal with it anymore, and we transitioned her into a long-term care facility. For a while, that seemed to be going well. But then in early November, she got a cough, and it kept getting worse. By the first week or 2 of December, it was bad. They sent her to the hospital where she was diagnosed with pneumonia and was strongly advised to be put on a ventilator. She reluctantly agreed, and she never woke up. Her condition continued to get worse and worse, despite the best efforts of the medical staff. On the 19th, she passed away. I was devastated. We were married for 25 years and I loved her. But I'm also relieved, both for myself and for her. For her, because she had been more and more miserable over the years as her capabilities faded, and she felt worse and worse. She wasn't happy. For myself, because as much as I loved her, I had lost myself. My entire existence had been dedicated to her for years. I had no hobbies to speak of. I had no ability to go out and do things away from the house. I had no energy. And now I have time again. I can do things like go on a hike in the mountains all day without worrying about whether she's fallen in the bathroom and hit her head. I can spend time working on my hobbies. I have a budget that I have full control of again and can save money without having to fight with someone who wants to spend money just because it exists. I can go to the gym and work on my own health, which had definitely suffered for the past 10 years. So yes, I am relieved that my wife passed away. And I feel guilty about that sometimes, but not that guilty. You did more than enough. More than a lot of people in that position could actually. You faithfully upheld your vows to the end. Much respect and admiration to you, sir. You have earned your spot in whatever afterlife you believe in. You have also earned your freedom in this life. Hopefully you are healthy and have years ahead of you still. Good luck. Thank you. And yeah, I luckily still have most of my health. I'm very overweight and ended up with diabetes, but I've got my diabetes under good control and I'm going out to the gym and working out with a personal trainer. I suspect if I had continued as I was much longer, I would have started to slide down a dangerous slope very quickly. But I have hopefully caught it in time and can undo most of the damage. Good news is, with diet and exercise, you can reverse diabetes. I don't even care if I need to be on insulin the rest of my life, which I may or may not need to be. I just want to be able to be physically active outdoors again. Hiking, skiing, ham radio, astronomy, photography, etc. Caregiver burnout is a real thing. I'm a nurse who has worked with many critical long-term care patients and it's not easy, and I got to go home at the end of the day. There's no need for guilt. You took the best care of her you could, and when you couldn't anymore, you put her somewhere that could. Grief is also different for people who have loved ones with long illnesses. You've probably been grieving for years whether you've realized it or not. So to outsiders, it may seem like you've moved on sooner, but the reality is that you've already been grieving. Yes, I definitely did some pre-grieving. I also lost my mother a few years ago. So I had some practice at that tier of grief. And I'm naturally pretty stoic as well, so while I was a wreck the day of the memorial, I've been mostly okay otherwise, and actually feeling pretty good most of the time. Last story. My brother introduced the family to his sugar baby / gold digger, and everyone is acting like it's normal. For background, my 34 male brother 37 male is independently very wealthy after climbing the ranks of a successful tech startup that struck big. He is also very generous with his money. For instance, he has set up funds to ensure our parents will be taken care of for their lives. He covers the bill at restaurants and it pays for the family's accommodations when we travel. The rest of our family is financially stable with careers, upper middle class, so we do not need him to do this and never assume he will cover things, but he often insists. He was in a 7-year relationship, 2 years married, with his ex-wife, 35 female, prior to getting divorced. They met in college, when they were both poor. His divorce was a dark time for him, and he was admittedly depressed, which was hard on the whole family. He was single for about 2 years after his divorce and dated casually, but never mentioned any serious relationships. About 2 years ago, our other sibling got married, and my brother, then single, flew into town for the wedding event. He was noticeably in a foul mood, very unlike himself, especially when all the siblings get together. He told me he had previously been seeing a new girl, Maggie, who had recently blocked him from all communication platforms after he made a joke that did not land well, and he was effectively going through a breakup. I offered my support, but he clearly did not want to talk about it at the time. 6 months later, he announced to the family that Maggie was now his girlfriend and that they had been dating for 2 months, and then learned she was 19 years old at the time they met, and she had been living in his apartment for the last 2 months. After meeting Maggie for the first time, I found out she was a first-year university student studying marketing. She's obsessed with luxury brands, exotic travel/vacations, and Instagram. Most importantly, she lost her apartment 2 months prior due to financial instability, right around the time she and my brother started dating after the initial breakup. She's very pretty, easy to talk to, and shares interesting thoughts. But one can't help but notice the stark contrast in maturity and life experience between her, my brother, and the rest of us siblings and spouses. She and my brother don't seem to have any interests in common, aside from some movies, books, and TV shows. She also mentioned that she has had prior sugar-like relationships with older men who took her and her friends on luxury yacht vacations. My brother is infatuated, bends to her every whim, can't keep his hands off her, and of course finances everything. She pouts if things are not exactly to her liking, and it caves immediately. I have not heard if she has an allowance, but she has no personal income as she is a student. She expects to dine only at the best restaurants, wants him to purchase her luxury bags and shoes, and it pays for her maintenance. Hair, nails, facials, personal trainer, etc. He overall seems happy, which makes me happy. But I have a deep mistrust of her and the situation. They have now been dating for 1 year. He introduced her to the extended family, mom, dad, siblings, siblings-in-law, and kids, this Christmas, and everyone was very nice and inclusive of her. Since the holidays, when I have privately and lightly broached the topic of their age difference and financial dynamic with members of my family, my siblings and parents do not seem as suspicious or concerned as I am. They're just happy he seems happier than he was around the time of his divorce and the other family wedding when Maggie had blocked him. We are not a family who openly talks about dysfunction. I'm not sure if or how I should talk with my brother about it. I think everyone missed the part where the brother was upset about being blocked 2 years ago at the wedding when the two people in question would have been 17 and 35. I'm sorry, Opie, but that's just wrong. However, given his infatuation and likely inability to be open to a conversation about the age difference, I'd take a different approach. Talk to him from a financial standpoint. He said he set up a fund for your parents to be taken care of, so perhaps talk to him about making sure he has an irrevocable trust that pays him and only him so is taken care of too. That way, even if he never wakes up to what Maggie is doing or how inappropriate their relationship is, he could at least be secure in having an income that she can't bleed any more than the next monthly payment. She was 19 when I met her and when all this started, and this was over 1 year ago. She's now 20. He is 37. Sorry for the confusion. I don't have any issues with her. I only see red flags with him, to be honest. I don't understand how people have such a problem with women being labeled as gold diggers, yet don't express the same concerns when men, who could date age-appropriate women, choose to pursue literal teenagers or young adults, whose brains aren't even fully developed yet.
Am I the a-hole for not quitting my job over a colleague's crush? I, 32 female, live with my partner, 44 male, and work in research. My primary colleague, 30 male, and I have worked together for about 2 years on a major project involving significant intellectual and labor contributions from us both. The project is expected to span at least another 2 years and is vital to both of our careers. Not long ago, my colleague confessed to me that he is, and has been, infatuated or in love with me for pretty much the duration. It took place via a long email that was written after an evening of drinking. This was totally unexpected, but in retrospect there may have been some signs, but nothing that wouldn't just as easily be accounted for by considerate personality. Shortly after this confession, I came to my husband with the issue. I want to get his advice about the situation, and showed him the drafts which I'd composed to organize my thoughts on the matter. They stated unequivocally that I'm not interested in a romantic relationship, and hope these feelings won't complicate our work together. I was again surprised at my husband's reaction. He seemed offended, to think I must have invited my colleague's affections, and that I should immediately quit my job, as in put in notice tomorrow. I was so taken aback that my immediate reaction was to laugh/snort at a suggestion, which was probably a mistake. That would be utterly disastrous for my career, and isn't an option I'm willing to consider. I greatly prefer the entire scenario had never happened, as a difficult and lengthy project hangs in the balance. But I have no real concern at this point about my colleague forcing the issue or letting it compromise our work. It seemed like an intoxicated getting my feelings off my chest. I'll need to put a lot of thought and caution into how I proceed with the work dynamic. But abandoning our project isn't even on the table. About a week has passed and my husband has been alternating between irate and a silent treatment, and suggested several times that I should move out of the house to be with my new spouse. Today I swung by the house on my lunch break and found the locks changed and my luggage on the patio, and I have been blocked on his work number and cell. Obviously, he cannot possibly intend for me to really move out, and is just pulling what I absolutely believe to be an a-holish power sulk. But seeing how seriously he's taking this has my doubts up. Maybe I was ultimately too uncompromising when I refused to even entertain quitting my job for the sake of conversation and his feelings, and to shut the idea down so abruptly. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the little updates. Not the a-hole. Your husband, on the other hand, he is totally the a-hole. He seemed offended to think I must have invited my colleague's affections and that I should immediately quit my job. Because obviously the only reason someone could possibly have a crush on you is because you have instigated it. Who is on the house? Can't just chuck your stuff out. That's a great conversation to have with a lawyer. House is actually in my name, inherited from my dad before I married. The luggage I packed contained only some random things. A couple of suits, miscellaneous items from my nightstand. This makes me believe he is just chucking an outsized tantrum instead of expecting me to actually vacate. But you've brought up some good points. I know it's hard to face, but I suspect he actually does, if he's gone to the lengths of changing the locks and packing up all your stuff. But if this is how he acts over you refusing to ruin your life over something so minor though, you're probably better off without him. If you do talk to him again, which you absolutely shouldn't unless it's with police present or through a lawyer, do not leave your job for him, no matter what he says. Almost every abusive relationship starts with the man convincing the woman to leave her job. My horrible ex tried it, and thank God I didn't because it was my lifeline, and this behavior has mistreatment written all over it. Find a place to stay that he can't possibly know about and get a lawyer. Change any passwords he would know, especially anything tied to money or credit. Check with a lawyer before doing this with joint accounts though. Keep a charged cell phone on you at all times. Make sure a trustworthy person knows where you are, and consider getting some kind of self-defense tool. He may go insane when he realizes you're actually leaving and not begging for him back. Not the a-hole, obviously. He's actually in for a rude awakening if he tries to kick her out. His name is not on the house. It's her house she inherited. He has no stake to it and legally can't evict her. She can evict him though. He's throwing a tantrum because a coworker has a crush that clearly is not returned at all. And a good husband would never ever demand his partner to risk their entire career over this. I'm sure Opie knows how to handle her workplace stuff, so he needs to cool it. Though Opie, I agree with this. You need a lawyer, and to take some self-defense classes. Not just because you're a tantruming husband, it's a good idea to have the courses anyways. Just in case the crush goes sideways, etc. Please be careful. Also, OP, not the a-hole. Your husband needs help desperately though. He is showing signs of abusive behavior. And now for the updates. Hubby called me. Long story short, he's been extremely anxious each day when I leave for work, and buckled from that pressure today. I'm welcome back home once I've quit my job, which is obviously still unacceptable. I am considering taking a week of accrued paid leave, which will hopefully result in an adult conversation with husband, as well as coming to a decision about how to best handle colleague. That failing, I'm hearing the word lawyer loud and clear throughout these comments. I'm grateful for all of the support and perspective. Update 2. I ended up calling my sister third-date female, something I avoided initially because I didn't want to steer the pot by involving family members who are already disliked by husband. I'm currently with her and cousin, 35 male, who are both supportive. Our plan is to call a locksmith tomorrow to regain access to the property. Husband can ruminate with friends or at a hotel for the present, and for cousin to collect some important things of mine from the house, and for me to stay with my sister for a few days while I take a hard look at my situation and options. I'm not set on divorce at this point, but I definitely need to reassert some very basic boundaries before exploring further discussions with my husband. Thank you strangers on Reddit for helping me emerge from the emotional haze with some clarity. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for making my husband miss seeing his mom for the first time in over a year on her birthday? Last night was my 21 mother-in-law's birthday. She is 65 and healthy, but my husband, 23, hasn't seen her since the beginning of the pandemic. This is important to know. I'm 34 weeks pregnant and also healthy. But last night, I was feeling particularly emotional and physically in pain from working. I'm working from home until my due date, but my boss made me go in to make copies, and that turned into a half-day event. By the time I got home, I was exhausted and in need of a massage. My husband was on his way out of his mom's dinner, and he was expecting me to meet him there. He was disappointed when I told him I wasn't going to go, but he understood. However, when I asked him to stay back for half an hour to give me a massage, he got upset that I'd make him late, and in turn piss off his mom on the day seeing her again for the first time since pre-pandemic. So I suggested I get a massage from our mutual friend, my best friend's boyfriend, who is a massage therapist in training. But there's a tiny bit of history between us, so my husband didn't like that either. So to quicken the recount, we argued. He ended up being late. And after his mom called and he blamed me for his being late, which resulted in me getting lectured by his mom, I told him to stay home and take care of me, or he'd have to start paying his own phone bill. I pay his. He did it, but then slept on the couch that night. Didn't speak to me at all today. And tonight when I returned from making more copies at the office, he'd claimed the bedroom, leaving my stuff for sleeping on the couch. About an hour before writing this, my sister-in-law, 30s, called and yelled at me for not letting my husband go to the dinner. He'll be able to see his family, including his mom, whenever now that she's vaccinated, but he missed out on the family reunion experience of the dinner. But I literally just needed some TLC. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the comments before the little update. You're the a-hole. There's a time and a place for needy behavior. That time ain't it. Why couldn't the massage wait till later? You also blackmailed him into staying home, not to mention the weird threat to invite him next over. You're the a-hole. No one's mentioning the whole guy who she has a tiny bit of history with thing, which is such a weird manipulative card to play. You're the a-hole. Time to grow up before your baby comes. You're acting manipulative, immature, and honestly are toxic as hell. Seriously. You said you'd get a massage from a guy you have history with? What? You made your husband stay home to take care of you and threatened to not do something for him if he didn't? You are legit toxic. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does leave you behind after that psycho bullcrap. I'm fairly certain that this is the first Reddit post that has actually gotten under my skin. I don't think I'll be able to add anything new to the conversation here, but I'll give my 2 cents. First, you obviously think you're hot shot if you think that you have the power to threaten a grown man by not paying the phone bill. Providing phone service is a responsibility given to you in this relationship, and you don't get to just shrug your responsibilities because you don't get a damn massage. It's a stupid threat anyway. The man can go and get his own phone if he wanted to. It seems he comes from a family with a backbone. Second, get the hell out of here with this inviting your ex over to give you a massage. Pregnant or not, the man is right to have to put her ass on the couch. That is one of the most disrespectful, immature things I heard in a while. I hope you take a good long time to flip the roles and put yourself in his shoes on that one. Third, I understand in sickness and in health, but he's not your nanny. If you're all tense, take an Epsom salt bath or something. It's fine if you're tired and want to stay behind. His mommy has been there, and I'm sure would understand. Let him go eat dinner with a woman who chose to make her life about him. Good on her and her daughter for calling you out on this. You're the a-hole. I wouldn't be able to talk to you for at least a week. And now for the little update. Info. I don't know if it matters, but the history I'm referring to with my friend's boyfriend is a one-sided crush on his side. He confessed his like for me a couple years ago, and my husband hasn't gotten over it. So it's very obvious I'm the a-hole. I mentioned my friend's boyfriend because I'd mentioned the idea before during a regular conversation and he didn't take a pause. This is a friend that's around often, so there's comfort between all of us. But I understand that it struck a nerve for him. I also understand that my being pregnant doesn't give me the right to manipulate or financially abuse him. I could have and should have waited. I just got off the phone with my mother-in-law and I apologized, which she accepted. My husband did tell her that I threatened his phone, but I told her. That earned me a lecture, but I took it. I also called my sister-in-law, but she didn't answer, so I left a voicemail asking her to call back. My husband left this morning to go pick up our crib from a friend, and he asked me not to come with him, even though I was supposed to. So when he gets back, I will apologize for my abusive behavior. I knew that was being harsh, but I thought it was warranted. And now I see that it was just abusive. I don't intend to be, as I really do love my husband. I'll do better. Someone in the comments suggested planning another dinner, so I'll talk to him about that too. Final edit. I'm seeing a lot of criticism towards my mother-in-law and sister-in-law for lecturing me. In their defense, I've known them since I was a child. My husband and I were best friends before spouses, and we spent a lot of time together. So my sister-in-law sees me as more than a sister by law, and same with mother-in-law. Some of this was happening before my relationship, but it's mostly always been acceptable. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not having sympathy for my fiancé? My fiancé sprained his ankle rather badly at work about a week and a half ago. He's been told to use the RICE method: rest, ice, compress, and elevate. He refuses to do this, or do anything to help his ankle heal. Instead, he insists on putting full weight on it, doing nothing to stabilize it, and having this attitude of, I don't need to do all that, it won't help me anyway. My fiancé is now groaning with pain, and very noticeably limping with every step, and can barely go up and down the stairs. He's complaining how much pain he's in, and how nothing has ever hurt this badly, and is looking to me to feel sorry for him and treat him extra special. That's not me. I don't pamper or baby adults, but when I've tried to get him to let me actually help him take care of his injured ankle, it's been rejected. I got fed up and told him I have zero sympathy for him because he won't help himself, and he won't allow me to help him. And he knows he's just making it worse. So stop looking to me for special treatment because it's not happening. Am I the a-hole? Edit. He also refuses to use any mobility aids like crutches or a cane, which would be helpful. Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. He did this to himself. If he refuses treatment, he is going to have to suffer the consequences. My sympathies to you, OP, that you are dealing with such behavior. You're going to marry this dude? Should you have children, get excited for him to tell them to man up when they've got croup or rear infections. That following doctor's advice is for losers. Not today, home. Good luck to you, though. Not today, home. And in a way, this is a gift to you because this is very useful information to have about his behavior before you're legally tied to each other. He sounds like one of those men that thinks acting strong beats any sickness, trying to be a hero in his head for powering through. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay the internet bill because he went and blew a bunch of money? My fiancé is absolutely terrible with money when he gets depressed. He splurges whenever he hits a rough patch. He has never put us in the hole, but he still buys stupid stuffs and almost never gets used, or used once and tossed to the side. He also has a habit of buying drinks and snacks every time he goes to the store, even if he had just eaten. We have easily over $200 in gas station purchases a month. If he's not spending money, he's not happy, basically. We both work full-time at a really good paying jobs. However, we have been saving for nearly a year to have for a 20% down payment on a home loan. Despite us both putting money towards the savings in every paycheck, we don't have much. Maybe $2,500. Why? Because he is on a depressive spell. It has been for like 4 months. Therefore, he's only been putting like maybe $10 out of his paycheck into the savings to my $100 to $150. I don't use the internet. I don't watch TV. I don't play games. I don't use it for literally anything. Despite this, usually I'm the one who pays the bill. We split bills. It runs $90 a month for basic. 3 days ago, I come home to find a brand new toolbox and a bunch of tools. This man is not handy. I have never seen him even touch a hammer. This toolbox and tools run about $350. I was pissed. Didn't pay the internet, now it's turned off. When he asked why the internet was shut off, I made it quite clear that if he wasn't buying stupid stuffs that he will never use, then the internet would be on because we would have the money. I wasn't about to leave myself with $40 for the next week just to pay the bill because he decided to splurge. He tried arguing that those things are stuff that we should have in case of emergencies. I won't budge, and he doesn't have the money to pay the bill either, so now he can't play his video games to decompress. Am I the a-hole? Edited to add. He refuses therapy. He gets depressed easily once a year for months at a time. Not today, obviously. You have a much bigger problem than an unpaid internet bill. You don't say when your wedding is, but I promise you these problems will get worse after marriage. You say you split the bills, yet it seems you are picking up a huge amount of financial slack. He has serious emotional problems that he refuses to get help for. You aren't taking care of this man financially and emotionally. Please don't marry him before these issues are resolved. It is the refusal to seek treatment for the depressive episodes that is truly alarming. They are only going to get worse with age. Treatment should be a precondition for the relationship continuing. Not today, home. Don't marry someone who you don't trust to share financial responsibility with. I'm curious. How did he save up the money to buy you a ring to propose with? He wasn't depressed at that point in his life. That was 2 years ago before we started saving for a home loan. It's a very simple ring. I think it only cost like $300.
Update. My girlfriend confessed to having feelings for my sister's husband. Original post. My girlfriend of 6 months just admitted to having feelings for my sister's husband, currently dealing with issues. I'm confused and hurt, but her statement just made sense of all the weird stuff that happened in the past couple of months. I remember when I first brought her to meet my family, brother-in-law didn't come because he was sick. My sister kept talking to his sister on the phone to check in on him. I remember we were talking about him, and she hadn't met him yet, just stared. Second she visited, brother-in-law came, and I remember when I stood there with my girlfriend next to me waiting to greet brother-in-law. I looked at her, and something seemed off with the way she was looking at him. The rest of the evening, she kept to herself and avoided us. Third time she visited, I noticed that she started dressing up more nicely, putting heavier makeup, ton of perfume, etc. I noticed a strange behavior all around. Plus, she seemed distant and refused to let me hold her hand when we were all sitting talking in the living room, including brother-in-law. I then found out that she started visiting my parents' house randomly and without me, probably hoping to see brother-in-law there. At first I couldn't find an explanation, but yesterday, she broke down and said that she was no longer sure about us and admitted to having feelings for brother-in-law in the same breath. I blew up at her. I told her to stay the heck away from my family, after she said that she's going to find a way to tell him. We had a fight and I kicked her out. I feel so freaking dumb right now. I don't know what to do. Do I warn my sister or tell brother-in-law directly? I feel like I brought this on my family, and my now ex-girlfriend is threatening to make a move. Now for the top advice before reading the update. You should tell your sister about that. Yep, as soon as possible. And his parents too. They need to know that if she comes around to their house, it's not to say hello. Not to them at least. She has some psychological issues. You owe it to your family to warn them of a potential psychodrama that may be about to unfold. Tell them all at once in a group. If it escalates, your whole family should consider a restraining order. Great idea. Definitely tell the whole family at the same time, either over text or in person. That way they are all warned. I have a feeling the ex will still try to show up to their parents' house, so they need to be warned too. Definitely speak to your sister about this. Tell everyone, all family members, so she doesn't find an opening. Tell it from the mountaintops and alert the media if necessary. These peeps, male and female, can go through an entire family, cousins, uncles, brothers, in-laws. And don't discount the moms, sisters, and aunties either. Do not feel dumb. These people know how to get what they want and from whom. They read a room quick to find a way in, then it's like a recessive gene, and before you even knew it, she'd met your cousin. And now for the update. Hello. So I want to start off by saying I'm sorry for not making some things clear and answering your questions. My brother-in-law never met my ex before, nor they had a history or anything like some here assumed. He's been sick for a while and has been mostly at home. After my ex and I broke up, I went to my parents' house to put them in the picture, and I was stunned when mom told me she knew. I asked her to explain, and she told me that she noticed my ex's strange behavior after she started visiting alone and asking lots of questions about my brother-in-law. My mom, said she somewhat knew my ex was behaving kind of weird at the very mention of brother-in-law. I was then urged to not escalate things and to just block her and move on and not tell my sister or brother-in-law. I was stupid and listened to their advice. And 2 days later, my sister contacted me saying my ex showed up multiple times to her home, but didn't mention anything and said she visited to chat with her. I freaked out and knew that I needed to tell her. I told her to not let her into her house anymore and arranged for us both to meet at my parents' house. My parents kept trying to talk me out of escalating things because they said my sister may not take this lightly and might get physical with my ex. My sister arrived and I told her what happened. She seemed to be in a state of disbelief, and it really took her some time to digest what I told her. My parents tried to downplay it because they didn't want my sister to do anything irrational and out of anger. I apologized to her and told her that I had no idea how things turned that way, and that what happened was too much for me to take, but that I didn't want this to escalate. My mom suggested we let it slide and move on and not even tell brother-in-law, but my sister got into an argument with her, telling her to stay out of it, then left. The very next day, I got a call from my mom screaming, saying my sister beat up my ex after she showed up to her house and refused to leave before seeing brother-in-law. Both got arrested, and this is when my brother-in-law understood everything. He's mad at me and refused to speak to me when I met him at the station to support my sister and give my statement. My mom said I'm the reason my sister was taken in, and I haven't seen them in days. I don't know what they're gonna do. I wanted to file a restraining order, but got told I won't be eligible to get it. Not only that, but my ex is the offended party here, and me and the family basically owe her. My brother-in-law wants to see me tonight to have a one-on-one talk about the whole thing. Honestly, I feel ashamed I brought a legit stalker his way, and got my sisters in trouble with police because of my ex. They got enough to deal with and they don't need this mess on top of it. I want to know why the mom was worried the sister would beat up the ex. That's not a typical reaction for most people. Everyone in this story just seems so unhinged from reality. My first guess is that maybe the sister had anger management issue and the mom knew. Exactly this. OP's mom knew exactly how the sister would react. That's why she practically begged OP not to tell her. She knew it would end in a physical altercation where the sister would be at fault. A normal person's reaction to their husband's stalker would have been to not answer the door when they show up, block their number, tell their husband, or call the police, not leaping to beating them up. With a good lawyer, your sister may get off. If your ex was threatening in any way towards your sister and her reluctance to leave after being told to do so multiple times, on top of proof she was stalking your brother-in-law, sister may get a slap on the wrist. Especially if it's her first offense. This is such a mess, though. I'm so sorry. This is not your fault. Your mother was aware of your ex's obsession and kept letting her in the house, both during your relationship and even after you broke up. They let this happen, which is the creepiest part. Your sister got physical once she realized what was going on. Did neither she or your brother-in-law suspect your ex was hitting on him? I'm sorry she got arrested, but this is not your fault. You are being made out to be the fall guy here for your ex and your enabling parents. This right here. OP's mother is the one to blame. Ex could have been taken out of the picture a long time ago. Brother-in-law could have been told first before sister was, but the mother wanted to downplay everything. Ex is a stalker and showed obsessive behavior. Mom is 100% to blame for the current situation, not OP. Last story. My mother-in-law suddenly passed away in a car accident last month. At the same time, my stalker disappeared. Original post. My mother-in-law and I never had a good relationship. She has tried to sabotage my relationship with my husband since the day she met me. I wasn't good enough for her handsome and successful boy. I contemplated ending my relationship several times, but my husband always showed that he is on my side, and I love him. A few years ago, I started getting very threatening and scary emails and texts from a person. This person knew everything about me. It didn't matter how many emails and phone numbers I changed, they or he always found me. I made several reports, but nothing happened. My husband tried everything to trace the emails, but nothing came out of it. This past year, I basically never left the apartment alone. I haven't received a single threatening text or email from this person in a month. After a few days, I wasn't surprised. Felt like I always knew it was mother-in-law deep down. My husband hasn't reacted yet. He's consumed with his grief and I don't want to bother him, especially when he bitterly told me, "You must be very pleased now," when we heard the news, and I tried to comfort him. He apologized later and said he was just feeling guilty that he loved and chose me more than he loved her. Now I'm just waiting for him to connect the dots. Will he get it? If he does, will he talk to me about it? I don't know if I will ever bring it up to him. Also, I won't relax and go back to my normal life just yet. But I know it in my heart that it's over and I can't be happier about my life. Now for the top advice before reading the update. You know, there are a lot of cases where people had tons of threatening letters and phone calls. In many, they never found out who did it, and most people assumed it was some random psycho. But I wonder how many were someone close to them instead. There was an episode of This American Life about a woman who was continuously the victim of identity theft. Bank account kept getting hit despite changing cards, banks, everything. Turned out she was living with the thief. I have a disabled friend who lives with their family, and friend's identity has been stolen a number of times. I know inside that it's friend's mom. I brought it up to friend, but they don't believe it. To add, mom takes every single bit of friend's social security disability money every month. Every single penny. It's disgusting. I cannot believe I never thought of that. My daughter has a friend that has the exact same thing happening to her. Her parents take all of her money. I will have to see about filing a report. I agree that you should let him connect the dots on his own. I wouldn't even drop hints to help him along the way. Exactly. One day he mentions, hey, at least we haven't seen the stalker in a while. Then you agree and mention how the messages seem to end abruptly, and try to think back when they ended. Don't drop the exact date mother-in-law died, but say something like a few days before that, then see what happens. Maybe if you get lucky, your husband will go through mother's things and find evidence to point to her being the stalker all on his own. We can always hope. If they start up again, it's definitely still someone in the family. They would have been too distracted or busy with this to maintain the harassment, but if it starts up again, the timing is too on the nose to ignore. I go to the police if it starts back up. It's definitely mentally unwell behavior, and who knows what it could lead to. Sorry you've had to deal with this. I sincerely hope that, for whatever reason, it's not actually your husband, as he's my number 2 suspect. I watched too much investigation Discovery as a youth. And now for the update. Hi, I was here maybe a month ago talking about me suspecting that my mother-in-law was my stalker who tormented me for years. I was trying to get advice about whether or not to tell my husband who was mourning her. I decided to wait a little, but after venting here, I was sure that she was my stalker. I started living like I never did before, with 10 minutes walks alone, then 15, then half an hour, and so on. At first my husband didn't notice my freedom, or maybe he did but was processing it himself. Last Friday I told him that I was going out with the girls. Alone. Yes. Do you want me to drive you there? No need. Are you not afraid anymore? No, my stalker won't bother me again. He kissed me and wished me a nice evening. When I came home around midnight, he was still up. He said that he wanted to talk to me. He asked me, was my mother your stalker? Yes. He broke down crying. He said he has always suspected her, and even talked to her a couple of times about it, and she made him so guilty by accusing him of being my doormat. He said he noticed how after so many years of fear and anxiety, I eventually stopped crying in my sleep, and he has noticed that I haven't woken him up for a month now. I actually don't remember half the time I woke him up in terror, but he always told me and my therapist about it whenever it happened. He apologized for never discussing it with me and never protected me from his family, even though he had suspicions. Honestly, I'm not even mad or disappointed. If the police couldn't help me, I don't know how much my husband could have done, and I just want to move on and leave this behind. We are going to start couples therapy, and my husband is planning to tell his family that mother-in-law was my stalker. He is adamant about it, and honestly I think it's a good idea. My husband has also decided not to attend the headstone setting on mother-in-law's grave. I can't imagine the terror that was inflicted on you throughout this experience. I hope you are proud of yourself and your husband for working together to find closure. It must have been incredibly difficult not telling him your suspicion towards your mother-in-law. You are far stronger than I, and likely most people, would have been if put in this predicament. Congratulations on your newly found freedom. I hope you and your husband find peace and healing in the months and years to come. Please keep us updated on how your in-laws handle the situation. Denial can be difficult to overcome, especially when it revolves around a family member's actions. I remember reading your original post and being deeply troubled by the circumstances you were facing. I don't know you, but I want you to know that I admire your strength. I'm so happy that I got my life back, and that my husband doesn't hate me for it. He believed me. The love and mutual respect you two share shows so clearly through your story. You had the grace to give him time to come to the realization on his own. He had the grace to recognize how your struggling coincided with his mother's presence in your lives. It's a beautiful outcome to a deeply troubling experience. Y'all must be two very strong people who have found each other and made the decision to navigate this world as partners. Here's to a lifetime of love and understanding. I wanted so many times to leave the relationship because I couldn't take the stalking any longer, but he has been nothing but supportive and kind to me, and I love him so much. I'm glad we stuck together. I hope I didn't oversimplify your struggle in my response, not that you implied I had. Just reading back on my comment, I realized that I may have been too flowery for the seriousness of your situation. You must have fought through most of the trauma alone. Not that your husband wasn't present and attentive, but because the stalking was targeted at you and it was your safety that was put at risk. I can't imagine how lonely that must have felt. I genuinely hope your in-laws display the same level of understanding and support as your husband has. Absolutely not. Your comments are exactly the type I want right now. because I don't want to look back to that period, ever. I remember your post. I'm amazed you had the self-control not to say anything to him. I'm not sure I would have. I'm sorry she put you through such hell, but so glad for you that it's over. I hope that your husband is able to process this and truly come to terms with what his mother put you through. What she ultimately put you both through. Enjoy your freedom from fear, and I wish many happy years for you both. I didn't want to talk to him while he was already down. It didn't feel right.